Hello again, everyone. This is part 2 of my series featuring albums of the Collectors and Chilliwack, which are all the same band essentially, and part of the Canadian series as well. And in 1970, lead vocalist of the Collectors, Howie Vickers, left the band, and it became a four-piece. The four remaining members carried on as Chilliwack. And Chilliwack, the name Chilliwack, it's a native name. The Salish band, it means going back up, which perhaps means going back up river. It's Chilliwack's near the Fraser River, or on the Fraser River, about an hour east of Vancouver, like an hour's drive east of Vancouver. And I've stayed in Chilliwack actually a couple times. Stayed in a hotel there. Driving down to Vancouver, it's a stopping point kind of thing. And the first album they recorded, it's on Parrot Records, which is kind of odd. This album was also recorded in New York City, and I don't think they ever recorded anything before or after in New York City. But it's just called Chilliwack. The mask on the cover of this album, it's a very cool picture. It looks like a mask of a native band from the Pacific Northwest. The four members at this point were Ross Turney, drums, Glenn Miller bass, Claire Lawrence saxophone and some keyboards, and Bill Henderson guitar, vocals. They followed up with a double album on A&M Records in Canada. You can see the native art here on the cover. It's a double album. Looks almost like a longhouse, wood grain. Glenn Miller had left the band at this point, temporarily, so they were down to a three-piece. And Lonesome Mary was a big hit single here in Canada from this album. Still played in the radio quite a bit. So you can see it's a three-piece without Glenn there. Then Claire Lawrence left the band, and he recorded a solo album fairly soon afterwards. This was recorded in Los Angeles using some of the famous LA studio musicians at the time. The album's called Leaving You Free. It's on the Haida label. Nice cover art. Glenn Miller then rejoined the band, and they recorded this album for A&M Records. It's called All Over You. This album was recorded in Vancouver at Canbase Studios. Now there's a bit of a story with Canbase. Canbase was originally Aragon Studios, a recording studio in Vancouver from the 1940s. And in the early 70s, I think around 1971, they purchased a lot of recording equipment from United Western Studios in Los Angeles. They brought it up to Canada and upgraded their studio in Vancouver. And it became a very, very popular studio for recording. The sound, apparently, what they could get out of the studio was excellent. And as as an aside, this is an album, the incredible bongo band called Bongo Rock, and it was recorded in Canbase Studios, around 1972, by Perry Botkin and Michael Viner. Chilliwack's next album was on Casino Records. It was called Riding High. This album does come with two different covers. The other cover has like a hand with a photograph, holding a photograph on the cover. Crazy Talk was a bit of a hit here in Canada. And Come On Over, I think, as well. At this point, they became a four-piece again. They replaced Claire Lawrence with another guitar player, Howard Froisy. And then Chilliwack's next album was called Rocker Box. Kind of a cartoon cover. And this album was produced by Richard Gutierrez, who's more famous for being a member of a band in the 1960s called the Strangeloves. And, Carol Lynn, I guess, was one of their big hits, Nighttime. And he also went on to become a producer, producing Blondie, amongst other people. And this is a promotional photograph of Chilliwack from about 1975-76. That's Bill Henderson, Howard Froisy, Glenn Miller, and Ross Turney. At this point, they were signed to Mushroom Records. Their first album for Mushroom Records was Dreams, 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 recorded at Can-Bay Studios, which was renamed Mushroom Studios in Vancouver. I think Fly at Night was one of the hits on this, and Baby Blue, California Girl. They were hits here in Canada. I don't know how well they did in the States. And as an aside, also recording in the same studio around the same time was another band, Heart. Heart Dreamboat Annie was also on Mushroom Records. They were recording in the same studios around the same time as Chilliwack. Huge success. And this is just a great sound. You know, most of you probably have this album. It's a great sounding record. Came out of the same studios. Chilliwack's next album was called Lights from the Valley. It's also on Mushroom Records. They were a 5-piece. The band was supplemented by Brian McLeod, new member of the band, on guitars. And then Mushroom Records had a bit of a problem. Heart, second album Magazine, Heart left the label. There was a contract dispute between Heart and Mushroom Records. This is the European release of Magazine. And it says here, Mushroom Records regrets that a contractual dispute has made it necessary to complete this record without the cooperation or endorsement of the group Heart. And that created a problem for the label, which created a problem for Chilliwack at the time. And this is the follow-up album to Lights from the Valley. It's called Breakdown in Paradise. And at this point, Glenn Miller and Ross Turney had left the band, to be replaced by Brian McLeod was in the band, Rick Taylor, John Rolls, and Ab Bryant. Mushroom Records went out of business, possibly due to the death of Shelley Siegel, who was the fellow that was really running the label. He died suddenly, unfortunately. But Chilliwack followed up with this album called Wanna Be a Star. And it was a very successful album in Canada and in the States. It made inroads in the United States. And the 10th Chilliwack album was called Opus 10. They were back down to being a 3-piece at this point, with Bill Henderson, Ab Bryant, and Brian McLeod. Ab Bryant and Brian McLeod left the band and formed Headpins with singer Darby Mills. Had some success here in Canada. Chilliwack then released a greatest hits album called Segway. Has all their hits on it, their big hits. And the last real Chilliwack album was almost a Bill Henderson solo album. It was called Look In, Look Out. This was released in 1984. And it's really Bill Henderson with some studio musicians, like British studio musicians like Mo Foster on bass guitar and Simon Phillips on drums. I don't remember this ever having hits of any kind on it. This album's fairly obscure. Now, about a year ago, there was a 40th anniversary concert in Vancouver. It was broadcast on television, possibly the CBC here in Canada. I saw some of it. And where original members of the band, Brian McLeod unfortunately has passed away back in the 90s. But Bill Henderson was there, and they did a concert that was televised, and it was excellent. And this concludes my feature on the Collectors and Chilliwack. Thank you for watching.